conversations that come to you as an afterthought. This is But Seriously, We Mean It.
We're just two curious people with lots to say about anything and everything.
No, but seriously, we mean it. Welcome back to But Seriously, We Mean It. This week we're talking about standards. How does self-worth and your awareness influence the bar that you set for yourself? Let's talk about standards. How far do you think self-worth and self-awareness plays into the standard that you set for yourself or the bar that you set for yourself?
So, for example, if you have I feel like you need to really know yourself. You need to know your self-worth, you need to know the boundaries, you need to know your worth. If you don't know these three, everything, you'll accept everything and everyone that comes into your life sideways. Because I feel like if you know that this is where it ends and this is where it starts, people already come with that. Then you will say, no, I can't say this to Lute, or I can't do this to Lute. So you've already set the standard of how do people treat me? Because people need to treat you according to the way you want to be treated. So if you allow certain things to continue, then it's a wrap.
So I think you hit the nail on the head there. Let's start here. You teach people how to treat you or how you want to be treated, ne? And you spoke about boundaries. Do you think that it's possible to set my standards based on your boundaries? So essentially I'm asking, where do we draw our influence from? For me to say, this is my standard, take it or leave it. What influences my decision to say, this is my standard?
Loving yourself, self-awareness. If you don't have self-awareness, you won't have boundaries. You need to know who you are, and you need to know, which is something so difficult. I wanted to speak there when you were saying something about you teach people how to treat you, because sometimes you're at a different place in your life where your self-esteem was probably below the belt, and then now you are a self-loving queen. You start being, you start being self-aware. It's so difficult to reteach the people how to treat you. So how do you go back and say, no, actually, this is not the way you'll speak to me now? Like, it's almost as if it's never constant, as people were forever growing. So how do you say, you used to treat me like that back then, but not anymore? How does it get to that?
It's making up your mind. It's a choice. It's a choice you make that, we all make mistakes, right? Let's acknowledge that first. And then secondary to making mistakes, we're allowed to change our minds.
But you're allowed to change your mind, but how does it influence the people who are around you, who are used to, let's say, for example, you always, the one in your group of friends, you're always the one that is the ice boy or whatever. And then now you're like, I'm becoming a self-loving king. You guys are not going to send me anymore. People are going to be so shocked at, where does this come from? So how do the people adapt to you saying, no, not anymore?
Maybe I could be taking a very narrow-minded approach.
Okay.
But why are you so concerned about how my decision to love myself affects the people around me? And I'm not disregarding their existence in my life. But I'm saying, now that I've made up my mind, I'm choosing to put myself first. Or I'm choosing to undo my mistakes. Why should it be my problem if you're uncomfortable with my new position?
Because we've built a relationship. So for example, you are my sister, you're my little sister. And I'm used to saying, Ulutu, I know every month she's going to do this. Like, that's the bar that you've set for yourself in my life. I'm expecting that. And then now you're like, I'm loving myself more. I'm going to focus on my health. I'm going to focus on me. That will affect the next person. It will affect your little sister.
Really, that's the objective.
But
that
then how do they adapt? How do they adapt?
So,
because sometimes our boundaries get too much.
No, I think this is where we get it wrong.
No, I can't say that. That is so wrong.
No. But I want you to go there because for some people, that's how they feel. Like, no. You can't be firm with me because you never were. I'm allowed to change my mind. I didn't know any better back then when I used to allow me to treat me like trash. Now that I know better, it is not my responsibility to make you feel comfortable. It is your responsibility to adapt. Or, puma. Not in a bad way, but it's up to you to decide whether you want to be in my life or not.
So I want to ask a question, Gay, about standards in that respect. If you're saying, okay, I'm going to be self-aware, I'm going to love myself more, I'm not going to accept certain things, are you willing to rise up? Like, for example, are you willing to be what people expect you to be?
I am willing to be what I'm. So whatever I expect,
you're gonna give.
I am willing to give.
Okay.
I cannot give. I don't think it's fair for me to expect more than I can give. So anything that I expect from the next person should be something that I can willingly give
to the next person. Because sometimes standards are unrealistic. For example, I'll be like, okay, I just got out of varsity. It's just a simple example. I got out of varsity, I need to get a paying job, and if it pays me less than 10 grand, I'm not taking it. And I'm willing to be unemployed. I went to school. People have that mentality because those are their standards. I'm not going to accept a job where I'm going to get an internship where I'm not going to be paid.
So, okay, back to self-awareness. Back to self-awareness, self-worth. Now let's go back to the value that you're giving into the space that you're moving into. How much value are you bringing to the table? Because when we're saying you set a standard and you're being self-aware and you're making a decision, you're making a choice, we're not saying you must be naive. You must also be very realistic with what your expectations are. So a firm decision is not happening in the absence of reality. It doesn't have to be this abstract thing that no one can contextualize, can break down. It can be as simple as, I am not willing to pay anything more than this for an apartment because of X, Y, and Z. For as long as there's reasoning that makes sense. For me, there's absolutely no reason why you can't set your own standards within reason.
That's what I wanted to allude to, because even in our relationships, people will be like, no, I'm not willing to settle for someone that doesn't work, doesn't have a car, doesn't do anything.
Based on what?
I just don't want to. I love myself enough not to want to date a guy that doesn't have a job.
Let's go back to the values. What are you bringing to the table when? If the same thing that you're willing to give, or the same thing that you're expecting, you must be willing to give. So if someone else says, I cannot date a woman who does not have a stable job, does not have anything going for themselves, that guy, it means makabe nezo zinto zakhe ezize zakhe. And when we create these ideals,
but there's people that have children that don't want to date people that have children.
Back to your values and your value.
Like for example, somebody will say, I've seen, I just don't want a man that is tied to another woman in terms of them having a child. So I would rather date a man that doesn't have a child, but I have a child.
Okay,
I'm telling you, like there's people, I know a guy who has 4 kids, but he refuses to date women that have a kid.
Okay, so that's okay. Maybe that's where we then need to bring in.
King. He doesn't want to date a woman that has a kid.
Okay, slow walk me through this one.
Yeah.
Umama wabantwana bakhe okanye umama wabantwana bakhe. Umama wabantwana bakhe. Uthi makathandwe ngubani?
That's none of his concern. Okay. I'm saying he's a self-loving kid. So he's not concerned about whether his baby mama or what. Yeah, now when he gets into a relationship, he's got 4 kids, but he does not want to date a woman that has a kid.
So that means, okay, is he willing to maintain his standards and live by his standards? Okay, that's what I was looking for. living by your standards. Because the standards that you set for yourself, you must be willing and able to live by, I feel.
So is he not living by them?
If he's not living by his standards.
Because he's got 4 kids.
Because he's got 4 kids.
But what if the kids are probably all older than 10 years, and then 2 years ago he was like, okay, I'm on a self-loving journey and I refuse to be affiliated with anybody that has a child.
Let's bring in hypocrisy into this conversation.
Yeah, because standards are very hypocritical most of the time. Because people, even though you're self-aware, sometimes you impose your standards on people that can't deliver.
What influences the standards that we set? Where do we get this thing, Yukba? For me, sometimes it's a defense mechanism that I don't want to find myself in unforeseen situations. So this is how I filter. Be it umsebenzi, relationships, something as simple as shopping. There's a criteria of selection in terms of the stores I'm willing to go to based on the quality that I'm looking for, right? So if we use that mentality or we use that analogy, you're looking for a specific quality, and that's why you're setting the standards. And we bring in the ISO thinking as well, that there will be a manufacturing plant or there's a space where they manufacture products. And the reason why there'll be someone who will be there to monitor or check that quality is to ensure that there's a standard that's maintained, right? But you live by the standards that you set for yourself. And so who enables hypocrites to set standards that they cannot maintain themselves? And disclaimer, perhaps we all have been hypocrites at some stage in our lives with our standards.
We have always, not all the time, but I do feel like there's a lot of situations where you are very hypocritical. Getting into spaces where you know you're not going to get what you want, but you forcefully get into those places and you want to enforce certain standards that are not there. Like you can't go into a place that has certain values that do not align with your standards, but immediately when you go into that, you want to fight them, but they never had them to begin with. It's like this mentality of saying you're going to get into relationships and you want to build because of the standards. Like I want a guy who drives a Porsche, so I'm going to, I don't know, I'm just going to, he needs to do whatever just so that he can get to that standard.
Okay, so all right, so Glare reference a relationship. I'm just trying to think in my head, because the standards that we set for ourselves that are way beyond
That's exactly it. That is it.
So in that instant, are we wrong though?
I wanted to ask that question. Like, I feel you, but I'm also like, but is it wrong for me to be like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Because some people, you tell them, this is what I want from myself, and they're like, but are you what the other person is looking for?
One thing I can say, Mna, from personal experience, there's a feeling you get in your gut when you are being unfair, when you are being unrealistic. You know it. And yet, I also think that you know when you set boundaries or standards that you would not meet when, if tables were turned. You know this. And it's always sometimes based on the other person's capabilities.
That goes back to self-awareness. Not everybody is aware of who and what they are. So if in my head, I am this person that everybody else does not see, but I see it. I am this person who deserves this, I don't know, this millionaire or whatever. But when people see it, they're like, maybe you need to start small, you know? And then you're like, no, but I'm not willing to settle. But the people that you're trying to achieve are not really the people that are trying to achieve you.
Let's move away from relationships, right? And bring it to our careers and work. what's settling in the context of umsebenzi? And I want us to take a very slow walk into this journey of setting a standard and why you're setting that standard for yourself.
Is settling not relative?
It is, I think. I believe it is.
Because for me, I feel like settling is staying in a place that you can clearly see that it no longer serves you. Like it doesn't serve your dreams, it doesn't serve your ambitions. You are literally just there because, I don't know why you're there. That's settling. Reason. You don't know, like it's, you literally can see every day that this is not where I'm supposed to be. For me, that's what settling is.
Based on what? The feeling of fulfillment?
Fulfillment, ambition.
Okay.
Figuring out that I had set certain goals for myself and I've finally realized that this is never going to happen here. That for me is settling, to say, okay, it's not going to happen, but I'm just going to settle.
Okay, here's my idea of settling. I have worked for company X for, say, 5 years. I have gained enough experience in this position. I am good at my job. I am getting paid enough for the job.
Okay.
And I have exhausted everything that I have needed to learn about this space, a specific job, right? I then go into the job market. I start looking for different positions, different jobs, or something much higher than what I was initially doing, right? And I mean, that's it feeds into self-actualization, self-development, self-worth, self-awareness, because I'm very aware of what's happening, right? And in my search, I am a professional who's experienced in field Y. So now as I cast my net, I get opportunities in other fields, right? It's not what I want.
Okay.
But it is somewhat doable. It makes sense because I've got bills to pay, right? The money's not great, or it's not as great as the previous position. But remember, I want to now grow. So this move is a different move, but it's still a move that makes sense for me. I will settle for this job for the time being. But this is not where I plan on being.
In the context of South Africa and our unemployment rates, is that settling though? Because it would seem that every other young person is settling. Because that is ultimately what most people end up doing.
What informs you settling is what the objective is. What's the end goal? What's the bigger picture? What's the bigger vision? And is what you are doing feeding into the vision? Or is it a detour? The detour for me, the detour could be in line with the bigger picture or completely off. Settling is taking what's off, completely off, and not the detour that's in line,
just
but like completely off, yes. But because I have to survive, like, no, I'll work at a factory. Although my goal is to, manage a store. Now, the factory is in line. It's a detour that's in line.
With you managing the store.
With me, because it's a part of the store, right? But I'll work at a restaurant, sorry, while my goal is to be a teacher.
But
that's settling. Because it's got nothing to do with the bigger picture. And this is my breakdown of settling, because when you settle, you take something that's less off.
I think if we're being idealistic, then that is settling. But I think for me, I still say in the context of this country, it would seem that a lot of people are settling.
Based on what?
based on the opportunities that are there, based on the employment rates or unemployment rates, based on the fact that there really isn't, people are just finding it hard to get to. There's teachers that have the certificates but haven't taught.
That's true.
They're not settling. They're doing something just because I do not want to sit at home and not have any experience.
Yeah.
So I don't know if in the context of this country that would be classified as settling.
It should, I think, settling regardless of where you're at.
Because they might be self-aware.
They are self-aware. So that's why in Sitimbali, settling regardless of the context of where you're at, for me, as long as you are taking something that's less off, regardless of the reasoning, as long as you're taking something that's less off, you're settling. Now, our problem is that there's a concept of Ubuntu that almost always comes back to bite us because we feel like we're being ungrateful when we get these opportunities. But you must always be able to call things out for what they are. If this wasn't what you wanted and it's a detour that's completely off what you're looking for, you are settling.
And
whether you're forced.
And I think we also
choosing.
need to be also honest with ourselves from that perspective.
That's true.
Because when it comes to self-awareness and self-love, I think we lie to ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to say, okay, this happened because it was me. You always have to be like, no, it's circumstances that and it made me end up being here, but why are you still there? If you don't like the chaos of the place, why are you still there?
Holding on. Let's talk about communicating your standards. How do you effectively communicate your standards, both directly and indirectly?
I think be deliberate. You have to be deliberate, which is difficult because we all have different personalities and we all have different, you sort of scared in certain spaces to say, but this is not what I'm going to stand for. But once you're deliberate, then from there on, that's the tone of that relationship, whether it be at work. That's the tone of you and your boss. You're deliberate about this is what I'm going to settle for and this is what I'm not going to settle for. So you communicate your standards from the onset, because I feel like if you tell them from the beginning, then you guys will understand each other, even though there might be disagreements there and there, but the person knows that the person would never settle for.
I think this topic I'm very passionate about because I held on to amazwi athi mama. My mom said to me, ungaboyiqala into ongazoyimela. And I find this applies in every area of my life. Every area of my life. Before I embark on a journey, I must know that every decision endithathayo sets a precedent for the people around me. If I say yes to you touching me inappropriately, it sets a precedent in that space yokuba you can touch me inappropriately. If I don't call you out, and without saying that it's all on me. I mean, you're a responsible adult. You should know what you're not supposed to do. But I'm talking about how I choose to relay my feelings in a space esinabantu endikunye nabo. Be it in a family gathering. I love the Zulu expression ethi alufakwa lubuya nodaka, where they say for some people akaqalwa noqalwa. There's people abanjalo. Why is it that kukhona abantu abanjalo kodwa kwabanye nguvula zibhuqe uyazenzela?
I don't know if it's just my theory, but I always feel like there's people, I don't know if this is going to sound right, but emhlabeni there's people abajwayelekayo. Like there's just people that are, it's very easy, like, and it's not about how, sometimes the first time you meet somebody, they'll do something, I don't know if, because people have, sometimes you have maybe a friendly demeanor where people feel like, yeah, this one, oh, okay. And then there's people abanesithunzi in our languages where you just cannot even go up to that person and say hi. I don't know how it happens. Sometimes it's not even about you ever speaking to them.
How does being friendly mean ndingadeleleka?
I'm telling you, there's this and that. That's why people have an RPF. That's why they say Uban Bani has a resting face. Because you can't go up to that person and be like, and say certain things. So even if that person sets the standards, they will say, no. It's only when they like, and then that's when it's going to seem like they're being rude.
Okay. I think as human beings, we fail to confront honesty and we struggle with speaking out as we should, and that's a big problem. So how do we communicate? What's the benchmark in these different spaces? At home, at work, in our relationships, and nasezindleleni for that matter. How do you communicate clearly about uphathwa kanjani?
You know, the people that communicate clearly are the people that are called angry black women. Because abafuni they don't want, and it's so, I don't understand why you are seen as angry when you communicate clearly what you will stand for and what you will not stand for. Because black women are supposed to take everything. So that's the reason why it ends up being, she's always angry. Or she doesn't want to play, or she doesn't want to do this. She wants to be firm all the time. But that's just you communicating your standards. So for me, just to wrap up my thinking, I always feel like you need to call yourself out every time you say yes when you're supposed to say no to certain things. So know when to say no, and the no that you're saying does not need an explanation. It doesn't need for you to say no, just say no. People need to understand the fact that there's certain things that you will not allow, and it's okay.
I think I want to expand on what you're saying and to just close it off. You can disagree, ungalwi. You can have hold a different opinion and stand by it, ungalwi. So let's just keep honesty as the key here to determine whether or not our standards are realistic, and set standards that you yourself can live by.
Don't be hypocritical.
And we'll be good.
That's it for this week. Catch us next time on But Seriously We Mean It, when we have conversations that come to you as an afterthought.